Do you want to vote on that? No.
Wait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
District 4.
Good afternoon,
Mr.
everyone.
Chair, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name's Matt Ryan.
Thank you, Supervisor Ryan. District 4.
Good afternoon, everyone, for being in attendance to our regular meeting and our meeting today. So Judy Begay, Vice Chair, Coconino County.
Thank you. District 5.
Let me put the speaker on for you.
I don't know if we want to tolerate him. I'm Lena Fowler, District 5. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. All right. So now we're going to get into our discussion item, presentation and discussion regarding fiscal year 2025 budget planning and possible direction regarding the budget process modifications. County Manager Peru will introduce the item. Finance Director Siri Mullaney will present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. It's that time of the year again when we start the process for the annual budget development roadmap. Today, Siri's going to be presenting to you. When we look at last year, and each year we look at the year before, and we look at the process. We also receive feedback from, of course, board members of the elected leadership team as well, on areas that we want to improve on. And I think each year, as we do this, we continue to evolve. And today is the first installment of several discussions that will lead to departments presenting information on budget. Also, with regard to looking at our financial environment in which we're operating within. And so we'll be providing throughout the process, throughout the spring, additional information, culminating into the development of the budget itself that will be presented to you for adoption in June, with the final adoption shortly thereafter. And then after that, we set the tax rates. And so there's a process that goes with this. I've always said, and it's an important part of our budget and our culture, our budget material and our budget book tells a story. I think that in addition to the numbers, it provides background on the county, it provides historical information, it provides demographic information, it provides a lot of data in terms of the environment that we operate within. And so again, it's an important policy document. The budget also reflects the values and the beliefs and the aspirations of the organization, and that's provided in the form of a document, but a lot of input goes into the creation of the document. And so we want to make sure as we do this important work that all the various steps that go into creating it are in alignment with each of your visions as governing board members. Your role and your input and your direction is key to what we are doing at the staff level. And so with that, I'm going to ask Siri to come on up, and she'll walk through the first installment, but again, of many conversations that will eventually lead to the adoption of the budget for this next fiscal year. Siri?
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chair and members of the board. So as County Manager Peru noted, this is our first dipping our toe in the water for fiscal year 25 budget planning already. And so what we have for you today, here's our agenda on the slide. We plan to talk a little bit about the budget information that is typically presented, broken out into two different sections of data. So we have our financial and our summary data, and then our department program data. And we'll talk a little bit about a budget schedule that hopefully accomplishes all of the things that we want to get out of the budget process, while also taking into consideration feedback that the board has provided as a result of last year's budget hearings and then subsequent discussions on the budget. After we pause for feedback on that, then we'll go into some guiding principles that the board can start providing direction to staff, and we'll have plenty of time for board direction as well. So some of the feedback As you recall from last year's budget process, we did try to document feedback from the board members. There was also a preliminary discussion on October 21st or 24th. So what you're seeing on the slide is some of those thoughts captured on the slide from the board. So what we did was we took this feedback that we've gotten, and as we move forward, you'll see how we attempted to build a budget schedule or a proposal for fiscal year 25 that takes into consideration the feedback that we received from the board. So some of the things we heard from you all is to try to avoid the marathon 3-week session in May, that you enjoyed the department updates, but if there's a way to spread out those presentations, that we should look at that. That you would prefer to have the departments, the presentations grouped. So for example, justice services or internal services. So we've provided some groupings for that. And that in terms of location, one of the pieces of feedback we heard was that you would prefer to look at the board chambers or a location close to the admin building. So all of this, again, was taken into consideration, and the slides that you'll see coming up is a recommendation to try to incorporate this feedback in a way that builds a different, hopefully a better budget process. So typically what we have is financial and summary information as well as department and program information. So we've broken it out. You can see the financial and summary information. We're not proposing any changes to what information you receive, just how you receive it. So for financial and summary, when we're talking about that, we're really talking about our short-term and long-term revenue outlook, economic trends in our expenditure picture, all of our 10-year long-term plans for our major funds, including the general fund. We typically talk about the organization's staffing trends, any local and state workforce environment updates to help lead the board to any kind of compensation recommendation or changes in that regard. We also provide a comprehensive list of increment requests, capital plans, and any other budget changes that are happening during the year. So that's kind of in our financial information. Then when we look at what is provided by departments, oftentimes our departments will provide information to the board, including their organizational charts, their program listings, their department updates, including any accomplishments, outcomes, and goals and objectives for their programs. And again, as County Manager Peru noted, a lot of this is really important information that goes into that public document that helps the citizens and the public understand the county budget. So all of this is important information. So what we're looking at moving forward is just changing up the schedule of how we deliver and receive that information. So what we've done moving forward is you'll see kind of a compare and contrast kind of setup, so that you can kind of wrap your head around what did we do last year and what are we looking at for next year. So off on the left, you'll see fiscal year 24. So we did do 3 consecutive weeks with the board in April and May at an offsite location. And I think one of the things we can acknowledge is that there were some challenges with that. We had some time overruns. It got to be really long days, which led to challenges really for us in getting board input, because by the time that we had gotten through a lot of the department presentations, we just simply ran out of time to be able to gather that appropriate feedback from the board that's so important. And it led to information overload, both for staff and departments and possibly for the board as well. Just a lot of information in a short amount of time. So as we look at fiscal year 25, what is being proposed is for weekly presentations from departments and in those groupings. So really breaking them up, doing them weekly rather than 3 weeks, turning those 3 weeks into a once a week update with certain departments as scheduled. And then looking at using your April retreat, as was discussed yesterday, for increments, to use a portion of that time to really go through the increment request forms and get board feedback on what is being requested. And this really moves that feedback to earlier in the process. A lot of times we'll hear the increments, the county manager's office will receive the increments and discuss them with departments and come up with a recommendation. But that's before the board has had a chance to see them and provide any input. So what this does is that moves the board input to before those recommendations are made, to help give you more of a voice in developing the recommendations. And then moving into May, focusing back on the comprehensive financial information. So taking the feedback from the board on the increments, the county manager's recommendations on the increments, on comp plan, on any other changes, what is the long-term outlook, and boiling that down into a couple days of bringing it all together in terms of really a budget discussion. What is the outlook and what does the budget look like with all of the recommendations built in? So again, kind of looking at 24 compared to 25 from a time commitment perspective, as a reminder, so we did some building block sessions in 24. So we did use some board time for some budget building. Then we were joking that instead of having the 12 days of Christmas, we had the 12 days of budget hearings. So we want to, that's what we're moving. We're not sure. We ran out of fingers, so we're not totally sure, but, and then June adoption. So again, for comparison, what we would like to propose is 5 partial days for those department updates. And then again, using one of the April retreat dates for increments, 2 May discussion days, and June adoption. So a similar amount of time, less in total for the board, and broken up again to make it more digestible, and hopefully more valuable. So what does this mean when we're looking at kind of the department look versus the financial and summary look? So for departments, and we'll go into this more on the next slide, but we're looking at possibly an additional half day. And again, this will be part of the board feedback for sure, as far as how we want to handle this, but taking a half day, possibly each week. So for example, if there's a board meeting on Tuesday, perhaps we could ask to meet Wednesday morning, or if you'd like to reserve half of the Tuesday time, it's really up to the board direction, but really using a half day each week to start those conversations or those updates from departments, scheduling them by organizational grouping. And again, you'll see that on the next slide. And then limiting the scope of those updates. So rather than trying to fit everything in, financial information, program information, accomplishments, outlook, asking the departments at that point during February and March really to focus their time on what were their calendar year 2023 accomplishments, what are the current challenges they're facing, and what is their fiscal year 25 outlook. Maybe it's from a legislative perspective, maybe it's from other trends that they're seeing in their department, but really setting the stage for going into the budget without diving into the financials of the department or the increment requests. And then moving into the financial portion, looking at the April increment retreat, May discussions, bringing it all together, leading up to June adoption. And what that looks like, just again, for gathering feedback, we laid out a draft kind of department schedule. That's a way that we could accomplish this in maybe groupings of up to 5 days. So we laid out every department by kind of what is their functional area of alignment. So for example, our internal services team presenting together on the same day as our leadership offices, 30 minutes per department with the exception of county manager's office, as they do have a lot of departments within the county manager's office, for a total of 2.5 hours. So day one, grouping number 1, asking for 2.5 hours essentially for those updates. Moving into the different groupings, which could be, of course, scheduled in any order, but you can see that we have the land-based services and community vitality for another 2.5 hours. Our third grouping totals 4 hours with infrastructure, safety, and HHS in schools. And then our justice services would require likely 2 groupings or 2 days to break that up. There's a lot of departments there, and that's 7 hours in total. So that was a lot of information. So now it's your turn to think about it and of course, provide feedback. The questions that we had for the board in terms of looking at this is to consider, the question of knowing that we would be freeing up all of that time in April and May, the 3 weeks that we talked about. Would there be any time? How much time would your schedule allow towards this new format of adding, 5 half days basically for department updates? What days of the week would we look at folding those into the scheduled board meetings, maybe adding a day? Is there a time that's better? We definitely want to get anything calendared as soon as possible. So to respect your time and your calendars, we want to make sure we can get those scheduled, which is why we're also asking for that feedback now. And then we can go back when it's time to look at those groupings and the time per department and just get some feedback on, your thoughts on that amount of time and the departments that you want to see kind of grouped together. And then of course, where do we want to do this? Do we want to continue using the boardroom or look at something else? So with that, I will pause and hand it over to you all.
Looks like we have a question, Supervisor Horstman,
Well, I think she's wanting our feedback.
or comment.
And my feedback would be, number 1, I think we need to have it here in the boardroom. And part of it is, it does go over. I mean, it's just inevitable, and that probably will happen again. And it just was too much travel. and we want to cut down the travel for our board. Or I'm sorry, our board too, but mostly our departments. Yeah, we were here, but the departments had to come back and back and back. So, and then in terms of the time you've scheduled, I don't have any problem with what you're suggesting. I don't know if you got this feedback from the departments themselves, if they felt this was reasonable. I mean, I would like to know what the departments felt about this.
Thank you, Supervisor and Chair and members of the board. So this has only been shared preliminarily as part of this with the elected officials and leadership team. One of the things we were trying to address is trying to find a way to limit the scope, again, of the substance of what's being presented, and asking, so kind of a compromise solution, if you will, from the perspective of not prescribing the data that's being presented. Last year, I think you might recall, we had some PowerPoint presentations that were very similar, department by department, right? So those were very prescriptive, and instead really opening it up for those 3 topics, but then having departments know in advance the amount of time they have for their updates for those topics, and to then schedule their time accordingly. So it gives them more flexibility in the format and in what is most important to them to focus on, because I think, and it will be important to get everyone's feedback. As a department, you could tell me I'd have an hour, I'd have 2 hours, I would fill the time, I guess is what I'm saying. So at some point we will have to come up with balancing how many groupings you'd like to see versus, and the amount of time. And we can certainly make any amount of time work as long as there's the availability from the board.
I have a comment. I like the idea. I like the idea of the groupings. See that group 4 will require 2 days, so that'll be interesting, and the order will be interesting as well. But my question is it feasible? Do we have time in our board schedule for this spring to fit in all of these required sessions right now with what we already have scheduled?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Siri, I believe we do. Again, if we can do advanced planning, there are some issue areas. And we had a good discussion yesterday on topics relative to quarterly retreats, and we have some work sessions. But we also want to balance this in terms of some of the observations about how much time the board is in session. In terms of, are there alternate ways to get feedback from you all without, of course, making sure that we're not violating any open meeting law situation? But again, we've looked at how we can look at in the past, can we do white papers? Can we do more of that information that goes to board members without necessarily calling the board in session? And so there are some areas that we're going to be doing that, gathering your input. Of course, if it's a policy adoption, we'll bring it back to the board, full board, for public discussion and consideration. But again, I think a combination of being a little more intentional on what all goes to the board, what can be delivered all in alternate ways, looking at our retreats, that I think whether we do want to have retreats, but also I think extended discussions on several policy areas. I think a combination of those things. And as I said before, the advanced planning and sticking to that going forward, I think we'll be able to manage the spring in a way to add this to the calendar as well.
Okay. Any other comments? Vice
Yeah.
Chair Begay.
Matt, can you turn your mic off? Anyway. So this 30 minutes that you're proposing, what is going to be presented to us within the 30 minutes? I think that would really the departments would do that. Okay, and we feel that all those would be I guess I'm looking at what's going to be presented. Is 30 minutes enough time for us to get all the stuff we need to get it done within 30 minutes at 2.5 hours? And then the other thing is we're talking about grouping and stuff like that. I'm in favor of that. I think so that all the other departments don't have to be there, and that we just have our certain ones in the room at that time. And the boardroom, of course, I think it'd be better that we're here in this building in case we have to call somebody back in or whatever. And then I guess the other thing is not long hours. I think 2.5 hours is something that 3 hours. And I think that would, be something that I would like to see. And then what days of the week would be, whatever you guys decide, I guess, because we have schedules already that we have, and we just need to finalize, which day of the week is. I know Tuesdays might be out, because of the board meetings that we have. So those are just my comments.
And thank you. And Chair, if I may, one thing on the time I should have noted is again, we're looking at a limited scope of these topics. And historically, a lot of the departments where you see 30 minutes, our schedule last year for many of those departments was a 45-minute time slot. So it's an adjustment of 15 minutes, but what we're doing on the content itself is removing the financial charts and the increment requests and org charts and overview information. What we did before is we had everyone kind of speak a little bit high level of what does their department do? What are all of their programs? How do they provide services? What is that service delivery? Now that that foundation has been built through prior budget processes, really to focus on just those topics, it's actually more time per topic, but less time because we're not covering, everything from A to Z. So hopefully, if we limit the scope and again, then give departments the flexibility and the freedom to use their time as allotted in the way that they see most valuable, it can be mutually beneficial.
I have a question on that. So does that mean that you're talking, for example, emergency management would have 30 minutes for a presentation, use that time as they will? And then on top of that, we're having board discussion, or is it the expectation that they will have board discussion within that 30 minutes on their topic?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the expectation, and we could build it however you would like. So if you'd like time for feedback, ideally we would be allowing them to give their department updates, and then we can get feedback sort of at the end of the day of what things did you hear that you want to hear more about, whether it's at your next retreat or during like the financial part of building the budget. So it also gives departments time more than kind of come back tomorrow with this, right? Gives them time to work on those things and build them into then the financial side of the process.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Supervisor Ryan?
Thank you, Lena. Yeah, it's time. Keep this guy in. Yeah, put me in my place. Actually, I get how the light is on. So just some thoughts, I'm throwing out there on it. This is, we're modifying, so it's a change associated with it. And you're changing patterns. So there's an adjustment associated with it. It's really neat that you're involving the board prior to making the increment recommendations associated with this. I think that's really good on what you're doing. A real trick, and for you guys as well as the board, is that you're bringing it back at a later date. Board processes can fill our brains. Quick summary format of where we were during the discussion. And to get them up to speed real quick, remember we did this, remember we did that. It doesn't have to be consumptive, but it's helpful just to bring it back. And then probably a piece of this, and I look to you, Steve, for a moment, and it depends, but you're going to base some of your recommendations on patterns, helping the board understand if you are making those recommendations, why that, if there becomes a position, there are times that people might popularize what they want to do, but it may be inconsistent with, like, pulling back from ARPA. I've been visited by a judge, and he's got great ideas and all that kind of thing, but they also were funded by ARPA, and there will be less money associated with that. So that dialogue between the board and you on that recommendation would be helpful. Instead of, okay, that was really popular, I really like them, we really want to advance this. Yeah, but there are other circumstances why we're looking at what we're doing. So that they are, and then the other piece would be I see how it's laid out. If it were perfect, you'd do it in 30 minutes and then everybody would proceed on. But human behavior questions might drive you a little bit longer associated with that. And there might, and I, the other thing is you're removing it out of District 3 and moving it back into District 1. I just don't know what's going. Was it because was it because you were stuck in traffic while they were doing repairs on the highway? Yeah. No, it's I think the good thing about having it here is the dynamics of you all and how you can process information. You have everything here available for you, where you can bring people in a little bit easier on that. I think Judy was making that point. Yeah.
Thank you. Supervisor Fowler?
Well, this is gonna be over a couple of weeks, so I think that every time we come back to it, that's just a little summary. I guess that's what the Matt just said is gonna be really critical, and then I think we can do it with board meetings because you can really frame your board sessions. So we used to have board meetings twice a month there for a while. And we were able to streamline all those, the needs into those sessions. And so you can really work with the departments and they all have that deadlines, you know, when those deadlines are, when certain contracts are coming up, they all kind of come up all at the same time. And then there's other grants and there's timelines on everything that we're working with that comes before us. So those can be streamlined. If the departments all start thinking that way and start planning that way, I think we can do it. And we could take even one of those Tuesdays and do an all-day session if we were to do that. And we can do it here like we've always done in the past, you know, and and then the departments can come also. They like to come and I think listen to each other as well. And then it's a great learning opportunity to learn about each of the departments and then meet all the staff and all the wonderful work that they do. I always think that, you know, this should be like the world should know everything that we're doing. So that is a great opportunity. So I think that we can really work with the schedule, but it may be like, if you were to streamline the board agenda, we'd be able to do a lot more and maybe in a shorter time as well.
And if I just can add, the other thing that we could, because I like doing the Tuesdays. I think we do have one Tuesday a month that we don't use. So if there is a time crunch or we need it, maybe we can use not a full day session, but maybe like a 2-hour work session or a 3-hour work session. And then my other question was, if that wouldn't work for staff, is there a day of the week that's better for staff to do those special sessions if we were to choose that direction?
I don't know the answer to the question, but we can look at that in terms of staff schedules. And, you know, typically Mondays are the beginning of the week is typically very busy, and then it gets a little, you know, not always, but actually Friday at 4 usually blows up, but that's another story. But again, I think we can work on that to see what, again, the planning ahead is going to be important and making sure that we stick to it, not to say that, you know, we're not going to be able to respond to anything else. But I think that again, working with departments and to respond to, you know, do we have enough time? We don't know. And so going back to the departments, we wanted to check with you first, going back to the departments and identifying, okay, in some cases it may be okay. In some cases, we may need to do some massaging of that. Again, the day where we're doing, you know, 8 half-hour meetings, maybe a little bit in terms of just too much. So we may even break that up into 2 days. But again, yeah.
Supervisor Ryan first, and then Supervisor Horseman.
Why don't you go?
Supervisor Horseman.
My concern is exactly that. I mean, and that was apparent during the last budget meetings. You know, Public Works, it took a long time. You know, a lot of them, and they're large. The departments are large. The budgets are much more complex. So it's hard for me to look. I mean, it looks on paper, it looks great. I love it. It's short, but I don't know if it's realistic. That is what my concern.
Supervisor Fowler.
It may be that, might be good to have a session prior to the budget meeting, how it's going to be set up and how to interpret each line item. I believe we did that at one of our budget sessions. That way, you know what when you look at the budget, you know what you're looking at, and each of the departments are the same. The other is that when staff present, it'd be good for when they have, talking points that they've done for themselves, if they could share it over here, then we follow as well. Thanks.
Supervisor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The other piece to just keep in the back of your mind is if you get hit by a big land hearing or something like that, the fatigue factor. You definitely don't want an overload, so just, it's a hard balance. What is it, an air traffic controller? But I think with Siri, it's more like a fancy dance that we have going on here. Thank you.
And I think that's where that non-board meeting Tuesday might be an advantage for us, because normally there wouldn't be a land hearing on that night. And so that time would be available. My other question is, in terms of the key points or the bullets that people, or presentation PowerPoints are they going to be all uniform this year, or are they going to be allowed to have some creative freedom? Like, is there going to be a standard, or is it going to be pretty much every department can express themselves the way they feel preferable?
Well, we strive for some consistency in materials, because again, it's apples to apples, oranges to oranges. So that's going to be, of course, our guidance to departments, is to use that as a guide, because that creates a more effective or a deeper engagement of the topic if it's all consistent. But and then but I will say, if departments and elected officials want to present additional information, that can always be provided to you in an alternate form. In terms of making sure that we're all providing the information to all the board. It may not all have to be in the form of, can I present it to you in person? Well, yes, but maybe we have to provide it in another form, just so for the sake of time and efficiency.
Okay, thank you. Vice Chair Begay.
Yeah, when we do these formats, it's very important, I think, to see some numbers, from the previous year up to now, and has there been improvements, and why? If so, how did, just some explanation, and graphs is usually good on that. I think we kind of need to look at that, because we're putting out there dollars, so to improve services, and how are we gauging that? And a lot of times we just have a document like this, and it doesn't have any numbers to it, and we're just kind of wondering about that. So if we're going to really improve, then we have to show those type of charts that show has been improvement in services, and then if it wasn't, then why? That would just be, for us to know. So I think we need to get some kind of a handle on that to show that.
Thank you. And I would agree with them, because especially with the conversations coming up with the end of ARPA dollars, and we're having to make tough choices in terms of what we're continuing to fund and what we're going to let go of. Those numbers become really important. But not only that, the growth that has been done from the investments we've had, that's important as well, to know how successful we've been with that money that we put into those programs. Any other comments? Supervisor Fowler.
Just on the ARPA, and then maybe repeating some of this, is and we have had this conversation before, to see where we are with ARPA and how are we going to close those accounts out, and which ones are continuing, and where's the funding coming from with those programs continuing, or what is the plan? Because we have done and the amount of work we've done, and now it's got to close. And are we letting go of the staff? Is there other fundings that have come in? I think that's really important. That relates back to how we make our budget decisions, what is going on. Are we picking that up in the general funds? Those are, I think, discussions we'll have to have. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? I think the only answer I have left is I also agree that I appreciate the boardroom as this place because it's less work for staff to have to be somewhere mobile. The only other place I was thinking that maybe would be appropriate would be King Street, because that's in District 2, but I'm fine with the boardroom. Thank you.
Let's just move it to Page or to the city. In fact, let's move it to Verdonia.
Travel budget.
Well, we have one more section. Thank you, Chair and members of the board for all of the important feedback. We have one other section that we just wanted to start with discussions on, kind of going to the question of the standardization of the presentation materials and the themes and the guiding principles really that the board wants to work into the fiscal year 25 budget and for direction to departments. This is another opportunity then for the board to provide some preliminary feedback now or to start thinking about it for a future date in terms of what those guiding principles might be. The first one we have on here is one that, of course, we're probably never going to take off, right? Balanced budget. That's our first. That's always our guiding principle, not just because of statute. It's the best thing to do. Also, best from a best practice perspective, we have always taken a conservative revenue and forecasting approach, meaning we don't want to overshoot, right, our revenue forecasts and then come up short and have to cut budgets. We've been very stable in our budget for the past probably 20 years here in taking this approach, and it's been very successful for us as an organization. So that's something that you'll see as we start looking into the numbers and the forecast for next year are both of those important guiding principles. Then you have in your packet just kind of a summary of what I believe is now probably about 18 months old, but the district priorities that at one point, it's just a summary of what was on the bulletin board, for a point in time, kind of high level district priorities at one time were laid out during one of your retreats. It's likely this has been updated since then, or perhaps, you have something else that you want to share in terms of other sort of priorities for your district. And so we can incorporate that as well into any feedback that goes to departments. Because that one was a point in time and some updates may be necessary to that. And then the other thing we heard was that in terms of themes for departments and how they're structuring their presentations, we do have our 4 pillars for organizational resilience. That is a mouthful. And you can see those 4 pillars there, and we could put out, asking departments to address in their materials and in their increments. How do their requests and how do their goals and their outlook, how does it align with those 4 pillars as another starting point in terms of just providing some direction to departments on what you want to hear from them or what you want to see for in terms of alignment. And what we have on our next slide is really what else. So as we look at what we've presented in terms of some of those things, and it's an opportunity, whether again now or we can come back and ask for that feedback and you can start thinking about it, because this is kind of an on the spot question. But are there other priorities or guiding principles that you want to share? I will tell you, we are scheduled to do our budget kickoff with departments in January, the first week of January. So if you do think of other things as well, there's still several weeks in which you can contact us and let us know any other feedback if something comes up that you're not ready to speak to quite yet today. But we just wanted to, get the ball rolling on that as well.
Thank you. Supervisor Ryan.
Yeah, actually, I like the 4 pillars. It's like you took it from this morning's breakfast in the discussion. It's just everybody working together. It's, it's really good. I think it shows a lot of what people are doing. We're not balkanized. People are working together and a lot of good efforts out there. So showing that and, it's good.
Thank you. Any other comments? In that case, my comment would be that I also really appreciate the pillars there and using that as a way of seeing how we're living and honoring our values as a county and as departments. One thing I would ask for that I think would be really helpful as well is I know we a lot of times get countywide data, county-wide projects, but since you mentioned our district priorities, it would be nice to get some of those projects and some of the data that is district were relevant. I mean, I'm not asking for a whole new set of things that people have never thought of before. But if there's areas where data that is district specific, in particular around the priorities, I think that would be useful and helpful, and it would help paint a picture for all of us what's happening in the other districts. So. So like highlighting one or two cool projects in each district?
Sure.
Sure.
Obviously the district priorities that we came up with during our last retreat, quite frankly, I'm looking at this and I could add more to it. And so I'm not sure, I mean, certainly as far as I'm concerned, they do not fully reflect, the priorities. And by the way, I don't really see these as district priorities. I got to be honest with you. I really see every single one of them as county priorities. And so I don't know how we're going to break it down because short-term rentals, well, that's kind of district-wide or county-wide. Forest restoration, groundwater management, I'm just looking at mine. And so I'm not sure how to do that. I also think, just after our discussion this morning, I'd like to add affordable housing and DEI. Again, I don't see those I see those as countywide. So
part of what I'm thinking of or looking at is data, for example, with the justice system. For me, it'd be really helpful to see data about arrests or jail incarcerations for District 2 compared to other districts. So that kind of data that helps think about different parts of our programming.
We'll look at that. Yeah, definitely. Appreciate the information.
Any other comments, questions? Vice Chair Begay.
Yeah, looking at the 4 pillars, when were these established?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the pillars that you see before you, those were included in the county's prior organizational improvement efforts at that time. And this was, I think, 18 months ago, if not, well, it's at least, I've been here 2.5 years, so it was probably 3 years plus ago. The county went through a pretty intense organizational renewal process. These were the pillars that were identified at that time. And so since we've not had the opportunity, we talked about it yesterday, to look at the next version of how we evolve those pillars, these are the ones that currently are basically in place. However, it's not to say that we would be able to, we would only focus on these. There are other areas that we can do as well.
Yeah, I think we're beyond nurturing a learning organization, learning. One of the things I keep thinking about was the possibility of looking at honoring diversity as one of our pillars. I think that's where we're kind of headed to, and we need to, getting everybody together. It's like a bond, with everybody that's within our county. So just something I just wanted to see. I just wanted to know that, and I just wanted to throw that in just to see, because we're really looking at DEI, and and we are, very diverse, and we all work together, and just, I'm thinking.
Supervisor Ryan.
I apologize, I didn't have that on. There are other times and other processes to look at how those numbers are pulled out on that. And the other piece, and Judy, I agree, it is a priority that we have diversity and inclusion, and yet we're saying honoring our people. If it's massaging that maybe, but there's some of the subcategories that we know that we've been working on, and we definitely want them as priorities. So just thoughts associated with that. Thank you.
Supervisor Fowler.
Yeah, I think, during the budget meetings, we really need to focus in on this, on the budgets. All these other, the actual detail work that they're doing on the ground, we can receive that in our updates as they come along, because we can have departments come and do an update on their programs. And then these 4 pillars, we've had meetings throughout the county, and these are just overarching, I guess, overarching things that we came up with, and honoring our people, really, that is diversity. That's where we put that. And instead of like narrow interpretation, we thought the broader would be better. So I just thinking about that.
No, thank you. And I'd just like to add on the diversity piece that I think we're actually talking about diversity through all 4 pillars. Like what we're doing is honoring our people and honoring our diversity. We're collaboratively thinking with all that diversity, and we're intentionally and using transformative leadership around our diversities and using that to nurture an organization that respects that diversity. So I think we don't need a separate pillar. I think we incorporate diversity in the language and the conversations that we have through all 4 of the pillars. As far as district-specific projects, I'm okay with not talking about that during budget. Sounds like my colleagues don't want it that specific, and that's okay. We are supposed to be using the budget to look at the forest and not the trees, so I'm okay with that. Supervisor Fowler.
I will tell you though, what we've done when Mandy and I, 1 year, we had everybody identify, and we had a chart how much time they're putting into the rural communities. I mean, it was like really detailed that way. So it can get very detailed when you talk about budget. Where is the service being provided? Put dots on all the communities. So just bringing that up.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Supervisor Horstman.
Yeah, just a comment that in terms of the 4 pillars for organizational resilience, I think these can't happen before we came on the board. But I will say this, having looked at them, I agree with all of them. So, I don't think it's something that necessarily this particular board formulated, but sure makes a lot of sense to me.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments by board members? Okay, in that case, please continue.
And I think we're done. So thank you very much for all of the feedback, and we have a lot of notes to move forward with.
Thank you. In that case, we're on break until 6 o'clock. All right, thank you, everyone. See you after dinner. All right, are we ready to begin? All right. I said I'd do that just to get things started, wake us up real quick. So it's now 6 o'clock, our regular session of our board meeting. So we have a call to order. Reminder, if you're carrying a cell phone, computer, two-way radio, or other sound device, we ask that you silent it at this time to minimize disruption of this meeting. Let's go ahead and go call to order and have each supervisor introduce themselves. District 1.
District 1, Patrice Horseman. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you. District 2, Jeronimo Vasquez, current chair and District 2 representative, and welcome tonight. Thank you. District 3.
Matt Ryan with an abridged version of my introduction here. Happy to be here.
Thank you. District 4.
Good evening, Judy B. Gabe. District 4 Supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you. District 5.
Oh, good, good evening. Thanks for joining us. District 5, Linda Fowler.
Thank you. All right. So now can we please have the Pledge of Allegiance? Everybody please rise.
Flag of the United States. Republic stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Now we'll have call to the public. We'll now allow the public for any comments from the public. So please note that issues presented during the call to public that are not on the agenda cannot be acted on by Board of Supervisors. For items not on the agenda, individual supervisors may ask questions of the public but are prohibited by the open meeting law from discussing or considering the item. Individuals are limited to 3 minutes for their comments. We will take public comments from those in the room first and then take public comments from those who have joined virtually. Clerk Daly will explain how the public can provide comment.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez. At this time, if there is anyone present in the room that would like to make a comment, you can make your way up to the podium. We also have comment cards. If you prefer me to read your comment, I can do that as well. If there's anybody that's joined us virtually and would like to make a comment, you can hit the raise hand icon that will appear if you hover towards the bottom of your screen. If you hit that raise hand, it will raise your hand and notify us you'd like to speak. If you've joined us by telephone, you can hit *9, and that will raise your hand and notify us that you would like to speak. And at this time, we have no one in the room or on the virtual format that would like to make a comment.
Okay, this is last call to the public. Give it 1 minute.
And there are no hands raised, Chair Vasquez.
All right, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to the Board of Supervisors consent agenda. All matters under consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by a single motion. Are there any items that board members want to consider separately? Supervisor Ryan? Number 13, are there any other items to be pulled? Supervisor Horseman.
Mr. Chair, at this time, I would make a motion to accept and approve the consent agenda items 2 through 14, exclusive of number 13.
Thank you. We have a motion by Supervisor Horseman. Do we have a second?
So move.
We have a second by Vice Chair Begay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All right, now we look at item number 13, consideration and possible action to approve an intergovernmental agreement between the county, Highlands Fire District, and Pinewood Fire District with a maximum value of $304,000 to perform work as part of the county's Federal Emergency Management Agency FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program on 26 acre parcels in the Munns Park and Kachina Village communities, and to approve a hazard mitigation grant program post-fire grant award for phase one in the amount of $10,521 with a non-federal match of $3,507, which will be covered by time and effort donated to the project. And hand it over, I believe, to you, Supervisor Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And no need to bring staff up. What I want to do is just compliment staff for working together with Highlands and Pinewood Fire District. As you all know, these communities are southwest of Flagstaff, large population based. We have a fire-based ecosystem out there. We've gone through the Brins fire, the Raphael fire, the Slide fire, that almost crept up to these communities. And a real struggle has been implementing projects within the communities. And so working together with the fire districts and having a grant like this, this is the right direction to try and, as much as possible, implement urban forestry. And I hope we continue to do work like this. And compliments to staff and the two districts for moving forward with this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Ryan. Are there any other questions or comments about this item at this time?
Mr. Chair, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve.
We have a motion from Supervisor Ryan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Horstman. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. Now, may I have a motion to resolve as the Public Health District Board of Directors?
So move.
We have a motion by Vice Chair Begay. Do we have a
Second.
second? Second by Supervisor Ryan. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
There are 3 items on the Public Health District consent agenda. Do any members want to separate these items?
I understand item 16 to be removed from the consent agenda.
Okay, so we have item 16 removed. Are there any other items to be removed at this time? Supervisor Horstman.
I would make a motion for us to accept the Public Health District consent agenda, items 15 and 17.
We have a motion by Supervisor Horstman. Do we have a second? We have a second by Vice Chair Begay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, now, number 16, consideration and possible action to approve a previously designated youth mental health prevention program funded by the Board of Supervisors through the Coconino County America Rescue Plan Act dollars to change the scope of work to include a hub and spoke model for youth mental health prevention services in Coconino County. Director Musselman.
Thank you, Chair, Supervisors. Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to come to give you a little more information about this item. I know we've spent many months working on this and to be ready to bring this to the board and to the community, and appreciate the support. I know we have met with each of you individually. We've been having lots of conversations around the work that we have been afforded the opportunity by the ARPA funds that you all had awarded to Health and Human Services now 2+ years ago. And with a big chunk of that funding to go specifically towards youth mental health. And as you all know, and for the sake of the public, this has been a process in terms of us, trying to figure out what makes sense, what things do our communities need, and how do we best put these things into play. And we've had many iterations of this, but we are here today to ask for the board's approval on a youth behavioral health center project that we have worked long and hard on. And I must start by saying and giving credit to Michelle Axland and Erica Shaw, because they have done the lion's share of the work in terms of putting the pieces together. So I'm excited about that. Let me see if I can advance the slide. There we go. This youth prevention program is going to, again, offer those preemptive care, utilizing a hub and spoke model. And I know that we have spoken with all of you about that, to be available in key areas throughout Coconino County. And as we roll this out, understanding that one of the major hubs is going to be Flagstaff as we go forward in putting forth a physical building to host a youth behavioral health center that once the program gets fully rolled out, the intent is that the youth will be the ones actually giving it a name that is much more exciting than calling it a youth behavioral health center or a teen center. These services that are going to be offered there is going to be, well, first of all, the development of the model is going to be youth-based and youth-led. The services are focused on people, place, and purpose. And it is utilizing a model that I know there's been lots of conversation about over the years with many of our partners, including the Stronger as One coalition, of course, NARBA, and all of the people who have been made up from our community partners as part of that coalition in terms of utilizing a evidence-based model of integrated service that's going to empower youth and be strengths-based. And the framework for that and what that model is designed off of is what you are all familiar with. And for the public's sake, the alcove model is the framework that you see on the screen, but that really is the pieces of the hub and ultimately of the spokes that will utilize some of these different pieces of framework. There's 12 components here of that alcove model framework, and that really are going to guide the program development, but it's going to be done in a way that is on the building blocks of what the communities and what our youth identify in terms of what the needs are. One of those components, of course, is the peer and family support piece of this, which is, obviously having the peers. This is going to be peer-led, peer-driven, and getting those peers the training and support that they need so that they can then help their peers. And that will be throughout the county, with the idea being that as we work on this hub model, we continue to support one of our spoke, and I'll call it a mini hub in Page, because we had done some work there initially, as you're all aware, and that we had proposed, and then we were fortunate enough to have our partners up there get some other funding to do a lot of the things that we had proposed. So that opened up this opportunity to move forward with this hub opportunity to actually build a physical structure to make a teen center, youth behavioral health center here in Flagstaff, and then have in that model the ability to collaborate and utilize our existing partners and services, to have telehealth, which I think is going to be a really important component of this as the hub, and is also to utilize for our spoke communities so that we can connect the youth in our county to the services that they need timely, and utilizing a preventative kind of model so that it's not having to happen in the moment of crisis, that these are supports and things that they will have built into their ability to access services. Also a referral source for our students and our families who we know are struggling with mental health and barriers to accessing that care. And under that prevention model, having all of those other partnerships that allow us to provide the wraparound services and resource navigation. So with that, I just wanted to share, we have had lots of conversations with many of our community partners, not all of them. We hit many of the key partners and including our partners within the county, school superintendent, our Casey Lightfoot with juvenile probation, and people at FUSD, of course, Superintendent Cheryl Mango Pageant, and people are really excited about this being the piece that's been missing on that prevention front end of the work. And so we're really excited about that. I know we have, NARBA has been a big strategic community partner in this as well. And I know that, I think somebody is on that would like to make a comment as well, but I just wanted to indicate how excited we are about moving forward with this, assuming the board's approval, and that with, the final planning, the permitting, and the construction phases of this youth prevention program at the Flagstaff hub location, all of those things are going to be coming to you as we get those components together, those different phases for board approval for actual expenditure of funding. But today marks the exciting beginning of moving forward that commitment and to be able to put this dream, which has been a dream, I think, for a lot of members of our community for a long time, to be able to put it into action. So I just wanted to give that overview, certainly ask for any questions that you may have. And also wanted to just highlight, because I know I had spoken to each of you individually about this, but I think it's important from a public meeting perspective. The item 15 that you approved earlier on the public health services agenda for the 1 FTE for the clinical staff person that is to be funded out of justice reinvestment funds. So that will be one of the key positions that will be part of making this happen. And as I have said many times before, the commitment of putting something into place, being able to utilize the funding that was allocated from the ARPA dollars to make a capital investment in our youth, but then having plans in place to sustain the way to operate this is very, very important, knowing that funds are limited. So that position being able to be a component of that, having our staff at HHS become community health workers and navigators, being able to bill access and other insurance providers is going to be key in helping sustain this so that this doesn't become something that is an additional general fund expenditure. And so I just wanted to point that out. Obviously, we're going to need to have community partners and we're going to continue to build that collaboration. But thank you for allowing us to be in a position to bring this forward to you to move on, to move forward on this exciting opportunity. And so with that, I'll stop and ask if there's any questions.
Are there any questions from board members? Supervisor Horseman?
And not necessarily a question other than just a comment. You're right. This is extremely exciting. And, you know, back when we were looking at our ARPA funding and the commitment that this board made to behavioral and mental health programs, and especially in terms of behavioral and mental health for our youth. And I know we talked about a pilot project, which we got in Page, and I'm just so pleased to see this, you know, coming to fruition. And I think this is such an important part of for our county, and it's such a important commitment that we, the board, have made to our community and to the youth of our community. So you're right, this is very exciting, and I'm so glad that you brought it forward. So glad to see that it's really gonna happen. So it's very exciting. So thank you for your dedication and your staff's commitment to getting this done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Horseman. Supervisor Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And actually, I'll follow Supervisor Horseman's comments on it. Not just that, though, Kim. It's also while we're reducing funding that I think you all work quite well together with everybody. It's not always a perfect world, but in building relationships and being progressive, looking ahead, how to put it together. I think what you're setting in motion is a great example of while we're withdrawing from the ARPA dollars, there were programs that were important. Very important part of our community, effective opportunities that you've set up a model that I think other departments, other agencies, first we want to work together, but also for a way to do this. And it's good that we can keep this going. So to you, to your staff, and the others that have worked on it, compliments. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor.
Thank you, Supervisor Ryan. Any other comments from other board members? Supervisor Fowler?
I'm just looking forward to seeing that out in the community. And what is the timeline that we're looking at?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Supervisor, Chair. I know that our next steps, and if you'll give me just a second, because I know our timeline has been adjusted just slightly, but you know, with the approval of the with the FTE that just happened tonight, we intend, Michelle and Erica have been working diligently to get the job description, working with HR. So we're ready to go out and start recruiting for that position. Erica and Michelle as well, and others are working on, now that once we're moving forward to start working on getting the youth groups together to start getting the information from youth in terms of getting things set up. And then also simultaneously, we've been working, doing some front work with our facilities department in terms of working with architects to start doing some initial planning, knowing what kind of square footage we're looking at. So really the intent, and this is an aggressive timeline, so I'll own that, but the intent, because we know we need to get this funding spent as well, is to, in the perfect world, I would love to see us have this open by, well, tomorrow, of course, would be great. But knowing we have to construct a physical building, I think that's a little optimistic. But certainly by 2025, we want to be in the building. But in the meantime, this entire next year, we'll be getting all of the services and the structure in place to be ready to roll, and also then working with our partners, looking at our getting information too, not only to get this off the ground, but also utilizing the youth in all of our other communities as well to have impact, to have input into what this looks like. While it's going to look different in each of our smaller communities, and depending on what is brought forward, there's still from a conceptual idea of what being youth-led and youth-driven, we want to know and hear from all of our youth in our county. So hopefully within a year, we'll be in the building, right, Michelle? That's what we're going for. And believe it, we drive a hard, Tom is not here tonight, but he's probably on listening. And so he knows how excited we are and that we want to move things forward. Thank you, Supervisor.
Vice Chair Begay.
Yeah. I guess, once we develop this whole thing and get it going and stuff like that, we do have the ARPA dollars that we're using. Are there any other fundings that you're using for this project, or just the ARPA? The second question is the sustaining the program in future years, once it starts rolling. So that's my question, but I do support, and I'm glad that, we're running with this and, trying to get things going for our kids. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Begay, Chair and Supervisors. The funding is, so the ARPA related dollars and the capital related funding is obviously the one-time dollars that are the big bucket of money to actually construct the facility. The sustainability of the operations will come from, one, the position that you just approved from the Justice Reinvestment Funds that we receive based off of marijuana, medical marijuana funding. I know we've got to try to make sure I got it in the right categories here. And then for that position, and then the other staff that will then be built into that will be part of our existing staff that we have then also get certified as community health workers, that we're able to bill insurance. We're also doing this kind of broader in HHS in our clinic side of things as well, so that we're able to bring back in revenue, so that we allow capacity for our existing funds that are allocated to the health district and HHS to be able to put towards the operational components of this facility. So we are, certainly don't have every single dollar accounted for at this point, but we have a great framework for that, and we'll continue to work again with our partners. I know we have others as well who have committed to helping see this through, and I certainly know that NARBA is one of them as well. And I would be remiss too to make sure that we don't forget to allow for their comment after any other questions. So thank you.
Yeah, just first off, really excited that we're getting to this point. It's something that we made a commitment to in 2022 when we're having these discussions. So it's really exciting to see we're at this point. I was curious, are we gonna be seeing more of this as part of the budget discussion, or is this not necessary because the funding has already been appropriate or allocated, and it's more of just following through a project?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, Supervisors. This is because this was funding that was already budgeted and approved. This will not be things that we intend to bring forward during the budget process. We will be bringing you things that are associated with contracts and other things when we get ready to secure, who is going to build and construct the facility. Those are things that under procurement rules, we will be bringing those things to the board as we need to throughout the year.
Great, thank you. And then my other question is, if everything lines up perfectly, when do you anticipate start building, and how long will it take to build this facility you're thinking about? If you want to get in by January, or at least 2025.
Well, in all fairness to Tom Hanachek, our facilities director, I think we already have I'll tell you, we have a meeting set up in January. Already first week that we're all back from holiday break to actually be meeting and talking with the architects. So we intend to move quickly. I'll know better after the first of the year, kind of what kind of realistic time frame exists, but we do already have a meeting on the calendar for that first week in January with the architects so that we can start moving forward as quickly as possible.
Great, that's really exciting. We look forward to hearing the progress as we move forward. Are there any questions or comments before we move on? Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Chair, I'm not sure because I can't see on my screen if there's,
Mr. Chair,
oh, thank you.
Yes.
I can go ahead and chime in. So one of the boxes on the chart that we showed were community partnerships that are very important to the success of this project. We have Stronger as One, which is an initiative of NARB Institute, and Carrie Bloom is on. John Perez was not able to make it, but if we could have Carrie added to the conversation, she wanted to make some comments.
Please do.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Vasquez and members of the board. Thank you so much for your action tonight. I want to just reflect for a moment on how significant this is. We have been thinking about and dreaming about this since 2018. And shortly before, just weeks before the pandemic, a group of youth gathered, and during a day-long facilitated conversation, they named one priority. This was the youth speaking for themselves. They said, we need a place. And they called it Our Place. And none of us knew at that point in time the kind of distress, grief, what the pandemic would mean for these young people. And so today we have this youth mental health crisis, and you all are creating a cornerstone, really a place that will serve our community for decades and decades. And so I want to first just applaud you, the members of the board, for making the decision to invest your funds this way. And two, to thank, on behalf of the Stronger as One Coalition, the tenacity of the staff. I mean, the vision and the funding set by the board is remarkable, and the ability to deliver this. Thank you to Erica Shaw. Thank you to Michelle Oxland. Thank you to Kim Musselman and the many others. And then I realized that I did not introduce myself. I am Carrie Bloom. I show up as Sam Hoshauer because that's my remarkable son-in-law. But I'm Carrie Bloom, and I'm here tonight representing the Stronger as One Coalition, the NARBA Institute, the United Way of Northern Arizona, the Guidance Center, and many, many others that Kim mentioned earlier. So I believe tonight's a night that you can reflect on with great pride in the years to come. And we all look forward to supporting the success of this. So we'll be working closely with Director Musselman and the rest of the staff. Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And again, just like to reiterate our gratitude to your staff for working on this and getting it to this point. It sounds like our community partners are just as excited, if not more than we are for this project to come to fruition. And so it's really exciting stuff. Thank you. Supervisor Ryan.
Did you get all the people that you need?
I think so. It does. Yeah, it appears that we did. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking at an iPhone there. I don't know.
Yeah.
What it is. Yeah.
Supervisor Horseman, did you have a comment?
Just real quickly, and thanks, Carrie, for speaking on behalf of our community partners. I mean, this is just exactly what we were trying to do with this ARPA money. And we were really looking to outreach with our community. It takes a village. It takes all of us to be able to do this. And I so appreciate the leadership shown from you and the nonprofits, coming together and working with Coconino County to get the job done for our youth. So thank you, and please extend our great gratitude to the partners. And we look forward to, extending this partnership, you're right, for decades to come. So thank you.
Vice Chair Begay.
Yes, thank you. I had spoken earlier, but I want to go ahead and make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve a previously designated youth mental health prevention program funded by the Board of Supervisors through the Coconino County American Rescue Plan Act. Dollars to change the scope of work to include a hub and a spoke model for youth mental health prevention services in Coconino County.
Thank you. We have a motion by Vice Chair Begay. Do we have a second? We have a second by Supervisor Fowler. Please do.
Thank you, Kim and Michelle and your team, and Carrie, thank you so much for joining us, and all the other partners. I know that there are many, many partners that are a part of this Stronger as One team, and talk about a team. The thought of that coming together way back when, I remember that one. And now it's the organization, the partnership, I believe, has gotten very strong and really know each other and know pretty much the direction that the communities want to go. And just want to thank you for reading the communities, working with the communities, and then listening to the young people. That is so important. We keep hearing how they feel like they're not being heard. And this is one example of being heard and actually building it. It's going to be beautiful for them to help and paint the place, help put the arts up, help have their hands on the building as it's being up, some of them anyway, and it in each of the communities. And I know that we have dreams of going out into each of the communities. I just want to thank you. I think it's a huge vision and a huge undertaking, and I guess it's amazing to be able to think of something or hear something and to actually see it in action and actually come see it into being, So I just think it's just a wonderful project. Just want to thank you all again for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments before we make a vote? Take a vote. Supervisor Ryan. Okay, in that case, we have a motion by Vice Chair Begay, a second by Supervisor Fowler. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, may I have a motion to resolve as the Board of Supervisors? We have a motion by Vice Chair Begay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Supervisor Ryan. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, and now may I have a motion to resolve as the Library District Board of Directors? We have a motion by Vice Chair Begay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Supervisor Ryan. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, let's see. We have a consent agenda item. May I have a motion to approve the Library District Consent Agenda Item 18, or would someone like to pull it?
Library.
Library.
I can make a comment about.
Okay, so we do have some comments, so we'll start off with Supervisor Fowler on item 18.
So, and Mr. Chair, I just want to, thank, Coconino County. I'd like to thank Tom and team and the library district for continuing to work on the library. The elevator actually has a story to it. When we were done with the build, we thought we are gonna be done with the building when we were, working on the library building in Tuba City. I was told that we're gonna have a ramp from one end of the building to the other to the door on both sides. And because it needed handicap access, well, I didn't want to see that happen. So that's the reason why the elevator came in. Plus, we didn't have a restroom either. That was gonna be somehow built downstairs, so we extended it out. That's why there's an extension there with the bathroom. So anyway, I just want to thank Coconino County. This is another great partnership. Prior to the library coming into the hands of Coconino County, we were trying to solicit anybody, law firms, different law firms, different organizations to just take the building and to help us to have a building. We just wanted to build a building and have somebody move in there. We even worked with DNA. That we thought it was going to be their building, but it was really, really good to work with Tom Chapin at the time to really bring the library with and form that partnership with Coconino County. And it still is today. It's one of the most busiest library in our library district. So I just want to thank everyone for doing that. So I just want to, I know Steve was involved, I think, the whole time. So I just want to thank you. And it's just a great project that we worked on. Thank you so much. It took over 15 years to all kinds of doing things just to build that building. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fowler. Vice Chair Begay?
I just want to thank the staff for bringing this forward to us. And during our library board meetings, this has come up, as an issue, and that their request to have this amount and repair to be done was something that it came to fruition. So I'm so glad, it did. And certainly, there are a lot of people that utilize this library in and around Tuba City area. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Supervisor Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I've watched this library off and on and been in the elevator that was kind of rickety. I'll just use that as best way to describe it. It wasn't rickety. Yeah, we were proud of our rickety elevator, huh? But and the function of the library and what it means to Tuba City during COVID, everybody going to park in the cars around the library to have access to internet. It just really is a central piece of the community. So very important. The facilities themselves are dated and they need improvement, and this is a good example. And I'll also bring up Louise Yellerman, who also helped participate in I miss all my former supervisors, and but this is it's a very important area and functional component of the community, and just proud to work together with our board to help out and assist with this.
I'm sorry to forget my sister, Louise, but she's always, we've been involved with all kinds of projects with her. We even cleaned up uranium out there. That was a partnership that we did.
So Louise, I didn't call you back last time, but I'm watching out for you, okay?
Thank you, supervisors. Are there any other comments, or do we have a motion to approve this item? Vice Chair Begay?
Regarding the Tuba City Public Library elevator, I'd like to make a motion to approve the funding for Tuba City Public Library elevator repair in the amount of $26,279.
Thank you. We have a motion by Vice Chair Begay. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Supervisor Fowler. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Now, may I have a motion to resolve as the Board of Supervisors?
So moved.
We have a motion by Supervisor Horstman. Do we have a second? We have a second by Supervisor Ryan. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Action item 19 is consideration and possible action to approve the 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting schedule and annual meeting notice, and authorize the clerk of the board to make edits, changes as required by scheduling conflicts or modifications to the meeting schedule as necessary throughout the year. Additional meetings will be posted separately by the clerk of the board in compliance with the open meeting law. The clerk of the board, Lindsay Daly, will present this item.
Thank you, Chair Vasquez, and good evening, supervisors. As you know, annually, we bring forward our intent of when to have our board meetings for 2024 for the following year in December. So I did make it an action item if there's anything that the board would like to change. But we went ahead and looked at the conferences that supervisors usually attend and the holidays. And this is also an election year, so we took that into account as well. So you have in your packet the planned out meetings for 2024. And as you know, this is our effort to be consistent in our meetings. But as always, if we need to cancel or add meetings for special sessions, we have the ability to do that. So this is just something then that we post on our website, so the public is very aware of our intention for our board meetings for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Horstman.
And I do think, thank you, Lindsay, for you and your staff. We cannot thank you enough, and we can't recognize enough the work that you do on behalf of the board and the county. So, again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know this has been a long time coming to get everything and juggling together. I do think that we had decided that January 23rd was going to be a day instead of an
Correct.
evening, and then we're not going to do a meeting on the 30th. So I think that, and I know that you have the authority if we go forward and accept this to make those changes, but I think that's what we're intending.
That is correct.
Thank you. Are there any other comments by board members? Supervisor Ryan?
Yeah, I actually compliment you in your office, Lindsay. You're doing great. Actually, and I'm sitting here and thinking, when you used to come up in the very beginning, you were really, hesitant in speaking. You're doing great.
That's something I enjoy doing, but thank you.
Well, I want you to get up here next, so. But just thank you for all your good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments by supervisors?
Well, thank you, Lindsay and Val and team. It takes a lot of work. All the things that you do, not just the board, but many other, there's so many other aspects of your work that you do, and yet it just happens to run so smoothly all the time. There's never any mistakes, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there aren't any other comments, Supervisor Horstman. I was just going to ask for a motion to approve the 2024 Board of Supervisors meeting schedule and annual meeting notice, and authorize the clerk of the board to make edits or changes as required by scheduling conflicts or modifications to the meeting schedule as necessary throughout the year. Do we have a motion by Supervisor
I
Horstman?
so move.
All right. Do we have a second? We have a second by Vice Chair Begay. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All right. Looks like we got through everything. So thank you, everyone. Have a good night, and we'll see you next week for Supervisor Ryan's last board meeting.
That's right.
Woohoo. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.